Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Just want to start out by simply saying always be safe with yourself, have the car properly jacked, and this video is basically a guide and I'm not responsible for any damage. And a couple more things that I want to mention too is that I did not record taking apart the car, which is extremely easy to do, so it's 10 times easier to take apart the car. Gaskets will be different as far as years of models for the XRS, so just be aware of that. They're not all the same. And lastly, if you have air injection, in which I don't, and my air injection is deleted, just be sure that you're going to encounter some different routings to taking apart your vehicle. Hey guys, welcome back. Don't mind me with the hoodie, it's pretty freezing at the moment. Right now we got snow up in the mountains, so I'm all covered up at the moment. But just want to touch bases on a couple things throughout the video that I miss, and you'll randomly see me popping up on the video, so don't mind me doing that. So just be aware of that for your guys' views. First things first, you will need to get an impact. I would say you don't necessarily need one, but it'll be greatly beneficial, and I'm sure you could get a use of it through your projects if you're kind of onto working on vehicles. I have an impact myself. It's a big boy. I paid a pretty good penny for it, but that's because I do it for a living. But you could get those corded impacts for about around $50 to $45 at Harbor Freight. They're pretty cheap. Of course, they're corded. They're not wireless, or battery powered. So it'll be beneficial. And the reason why you want to get that crank pulley a nut off, so it'll be great for you guys to do that. And of course, some motor mount stuff, and I'm sure you'll have some use for it through future projects. Now, when you're doing the timing job, parts that you might want to get replaced is, if you don't want to ever open it up anytime soon, is definitely the tensioner, the dry belt, the motor mount, and the water pump. Those are things that you want to get replaced. But since it's easy for me to do it, it's just time consuming in a way for my side, but I really don't mind that portion of the subject. I reuse my parts, so I know they're good at the moment. The only thing I had to replace was the dry belt, so just be aware that you might need to change up the parts as far as the dry belt, tensioner, the motor mount, and your water pump. Alright, so first is first, we're going to take off the main seal right here. I'm just going to pound it out. I'm trying not to damage the aluminum. Now, you don't necessarily need to, but I decided to paint my valve cover, my timing cover, in which I am going to paint my valve cover too, and I'm in the process of doing that. So you don't necessarily need to paint your valve cover, but you definitely do need to clean it. So when you clean it, you definitely want to clean it from the edges where you put your gasket on. So you want to do that very, very nicely and smoothly with like a cheap razor blade you could buy at Harbor Freight or any tool store, the small little ones. Just scrape away. I did that, followed by using the rag. The whole process of deep cleaning the valve cover, you don't really necessarily need to do that, but that's just me, the way that I decided to do it, just because it's me. So just a heads up, you definitely do need to clean the edges with the razor blade, and then after that, just grab a towel or anything you have laying around and just wipe it down, just to be sure that the surface is clean.
that. Push it out. Get the seal off. Okay, so I just checked what the parts store has. So when you get the kit for the timing cover gasket set, obviously you get this big molded piece that goes around the timing cover. You get that seal, you get the seal for the water pump, and you get your main seal for right here. What you don't get that is part of the package is the outer water pump seal. That I have to get separately, and I checked and it's 69 cents, which is not bad at all. And so just be aware that you're gonna have to get two separate purchases when it comes to the seals. You get the outer seal, your inner water pump seal, this O-ring right here, and I think you get this one. Need to double check, but and then your main seal also.
Now, when I went to the auto parts store, well, actually, I decided to get my parts OEM from Toyota, in which my dealership sucks poop, and their customer service just isn't that great at all. So there's where the bolt for the dry belt tensioner goes that feeds through the timing cover. On the inside, it kind of seems like there's an O-ring, but on the service manual for Toyota, it actually calls for Toyota sealant. So just be aware of that there's no O-ring or gasket for that. It's for the service manual. It actually calls for you to use that. So I was going through the hassle finding out what to use. The service department didn't even do the research for me and try to find out what to use, because I had in mind that there was an O-ring there that pertains to that, but there really isn't an O-ring for the fact that they couldn't find a part number for it. So they were giving me a hard time saying that nothing really goes on there, but I told them if there's an indentation there that seems like there's an O-ring that belongs there, then something has to go in there. So I did my research, and sure enough, you gotta put in a little bit of that Toyota sealant.
So we'll add some grease. All the way around. And of course, we're not going to be shy. On the plate, and it could last a lot more longer. And of course, just put it in. Just like that. And then we will this side right here, and of course you have these marks that go along with right here. There's a mark right there, just go like that and start putting it in. Double check it. Just like that. All right.
Water leakage. When you take off your timing cover, you're gonna have a little bit of water leakage coming through from the coolant. So to prevent from extra coolant going onto the oil in the oil pan, I basically just grabbed a dirty t-shirt that I had laying around and just stuff it on there, and for the water to drip on the t-shirt and not get into the oil pan, so you won't have any coolant in there. So you basically want to make sure that, see, all the surface from right there is nice and clean all the way around. So basically just grab the rag and start cleaning. Get on this side. Just start cleaning on the edge, right here, all the way down and towards the side. So just grab the rag.
Okay, then start following the line.
Yeah. And then if you need to, get underneath the car where the wheel goes, and then you can see some more. So we're gonna add a little bit right here.
Can't really see.
And then now I'm gonna put some right here.
Just the one, the whole circle.
Yep. Make sure it goes in. Just like that. Alright, it's ready to go in. So this is the tricky part. Just make sure the gasket is inside. Wow. And of course, to be doing the work, you need to take off your motor mount. And basically, it's pretty straightforward. We have 3 bolts on this side of the frame of the car, 2 bolts on the motor, and 2 nuts that go underneath right here. Just take it off, and then of course have your jack ready, and just jack it up and down as you please to do work that's designated to the timing process. Grab one of the bolts. Get it started. Now when you're inserting the timing cover, there's a bolt. There's some bolts right here that are hiding behind the AC. You want to get those in first, otherwise well, especially that one. Especially that one right there. That one's going to be quite a pain to get in if you don't get it in first. So just be aware of that you want to insert that first with the timing cover and not just put in the timing cover and then decide to put in all the bolts, because this one right here, it's going to be really hard to get back in. So just be aware of that.
And then it kind of holds in place.
Yeah, so it won't move around. Next, we'll do water pump gasket, followed by the water pump installation. So just grease it up, nice and good. Don't be shy, and then apply it. Water pump gaskets in. Grab your water pump and start scraping and cleaning, of course, all the residue that's stuck on here. Next, we'll install the water pump, in which I already did. They consist of 6 bolts, 4 of which are long, and the 2 tiny ones are actually close together, actually right beside each other. The 2 shorty ones. So put those are located right on this side, right next to each other, and the other 4 long ones go along the water pump. 10 millimeter socket for that, and which I would recommend the small little sockets, the 1/4-inch sockets, not the big guys, just the small ones, and it'll help you out with getting some stuff and leverage of squeezing in your hand and your socket and your wrench.
This guy is going to be your friend. This is a 1/4-inch ratchet right here, and this is your standard regular ratchet. That's 3/8. The 1/4-inch ratchet, obviously you could get certain fitments for it, like your 8mm sockets, your 10mm, your 12, 14, and I think they make 16, but I don't think they are 16. It's getting a little too big, so might as well use the 3/8. But to take off and put on your timing cover bolts, this guy will be your best friend. You could get it for a few bucks, at your local hardware store, and just grab your 10mm socket and start ratcheting your way. The reason why it's your best friend is because it's small compared to your regular 3/8 ratchet, which is pretty huge. And make sure you get the swivel kind, so you could maneuver it, because it's really tight in there. So tip of advice, if you can invest in one of these, please do so. 1/4-inch ratchet with your 10mm sockets, 12, and possibly a 14.
Now that we got the water pump in, we'll put on the pulley. I might have to jack up the motor just a bit, probably not, but it should slide in onto there. I'm gonna take off the bolts, just for reference for all you guys. If you don't have I do recommend you guys having like sandwich bags and label them with the nuts and bolts that you take out. But on common pieces like this right here, you can literally just put back the bolt, so you know where you're referring to, so you won't forget. So just a tip of advice right there. So I'm just gonna take that out and put on the pulley and see if it slides right in. Yep, so it slid right in. There it is, the pulley itself. See if I can multitask here. So basically put it in just like that, and then go ahead and just start snugging in your bolts. Next, we'll do the timing tensioner. Grease up the ring right here, the gasket, and then
Then you basically just put it towards the back right here, along over here. And there's no way of messing this up. It only goes one way, so there's no way for you to put it in wrong. I can't record and hold the camera at the same time, but what you basically do, where you see my finger moving right here, there's a pin, well, like a notch that you pull down, and you actually could retract this rod inward. And once you do, push it all the way down. You see that thing right there? You basically got to hook it in. Once you do, it should look like that. You can see that it's nice and hooked right there. And then you can basically put it in towards back. All right, so once you put it in, you have 2 nuts they have to put in there, and basically just tighten them up with a 10mm socket. Okay guys, so I did a mistake, and the mistake was that I put the water pump first rather than putting on this bracket for the motor mount. So what you're supposed to do first is actually put in the bracket first and then the water pump. The reason why is because this lower bolt right here, this one right here, that guy doesn't go in properly because the pulley housing is in the way. So what I actually did, just to save some time rather than taking off the water pump again, I decided to sneak in the bolt right here, and once it started touching the housing for the pulley, I basically just grabbed a small hammer, tapped it until it went through and started threading it in. So it worked out for me, but for you guys, to save the hassle of doing this, just put on the bracket first for the motor mount, followed by your water pump. So now I'm going to basically put on the pulley on the water pump and continue on. Alright guys, so next I decided to do the alternator. What I decided to do is actually to put it back comfortably. I had to disconnect it from the main power source, and then the connector that you see right there, and another connector that goes underneath the alternator, which is that one right there. You can see me shining the light, and that gave me some room to actually move around the alternator. It's really hard to get the alternator placed in the brackets. As you can see here, there's a bolt right there that holds it in place, and another bolt right there, the one I'm hitting. Why I disconnected was because of it has to go in between the block and the timing cover, and so basically the alternator has a bracket mounted to it that you really have to stick it in there, and that bracket is really tight. So the only way to actually get it in there, in case I grabbed a sledgehammer and fed it through the top, and then start doing my blows little by little until, you know, I could feed my bolt across the bracket. And once I got it fed, I tilted it so I could line up the other bolt. This is the easy part. You can line up that bolt really easy. So once you do and you start, you know, threading in the bolt, the hardest part will actually be trying to align this bottom bolt to actually start threading in towards the bottom, because you really can't see where you're going to be threading it from this side. So the top bolt was already threaded in. I could actually move the alternator up and down for me to have some leverage to feed the bolt on the bottom. Okay, so once you tighten up the bolts for the alternator, go ahead and connect your main power, your switch, and the AC switch connectors and go ahead and wrap that up. So tip of advice, if you plan to stop on the project and obviously you can't leave the motor hanging, the only thing you have to do once you loosen up the motor mount is just put it back in place, and all you have to do is put 2 bolts right here, and that's about it. You don't have to worry about the rest of the bolts of the motor mount. It'll just rest nice and calmly right there, so you don't have to worry about the motor just sagging away. And then once you're going back to the project, just simply take off these 2 14mm bolts, take them out, and that's pretty much it. Go back to work. Now I believe there's a tool out there that you could tighten or loosen the bolts of the water pump pulley. In my case, I don't have them. What I do have in my benefit though is that I have an electric ratchet right here, and it has enough torque to actually loosen them up or tighten them up, so I don't have to worry about that. But in your guys' case, if you don't have an electric ratchet, there is a tool that I saw online that might work for you guys, and you could just basically put them up on the pinholes that are on the water pump pulley, and it gives you leverage to tighten or unloosen the bolts. Alright, next will be the power steering pump. It looks like it's going to be difficult, but it's really not. I'll show you a trick to it. Basically, there's 2 bolts that hold the power steering pump, the top and the bottom, and it's a little bit tricky to put on for the fact that as far as your power steering, there will be 2 bolts and 2 nuts that feed across it to take that off. It's going to be a little bit of work to get it off for the fact that you have to it's basically stuck on there. And what I basically did to take off the power steering pump, I again grabbed my pry bar and just stuck it out, and it should come right out. And just keep in mind, you are gonna fight it a little bit because, like I said, it's stuck on there. There's 2 dowel guides, or nipples that kind of pop out in between, that kind of snuggle it in between, and it's really hard to put it in there. Now the trick to it is to feed it from the top, and then once you feed it from the top, you start to move it around little by little until you start going downwards to the guides of the bolts. And once you do, you can feed the bolts through that. It's really easy. It seems harder than it looks, but it's really easy as soon as you feed it from the top and then start going towards the bottom. I didn't record putting on the crank sensor, but that's your crank sensor right there. You basically just need to put in your 10mm bolt right there, feed it in, and it's pretty simple. Alright guys, so once you line up the bolts for the power steering pump, feed them through, and once you do, you'll feed the bolt from the washer kind of molding area location. You feed that through the outside. Now the other one, it's going to be really hard to actually feed it through since we have the frame of the car in the way. So what I basically did is fed it through the other side and make sure it's nice and tight, in which it won't interfere at all. So we're good to go. And grab your original Toyota O-ring, good old multi-purpose grease, and grease up the inside, not the outside, just the inside. Nice and good. Lube it up. And then lighten up right here.
And then grab your small hammer, tap away. Now I tapped it in on one side first, which is a bad thing. Get it out and make sure you tap it in evenly. If you need to, go ahead and use an extension. You can tap it in. Make sure you go evenly.
Crank pulley, what I basically did, I took off the bolt right here. I took it off just a little bit and I grabbed my pry bar, just stuck it on here and just started to play around with it little by little until it popped out. Once it popped out, I took off the bolt completely, and then you could take off your crank pulley.
Feel around it, see which side needs more love. Feel around it, make sure it's nice and flushed. Feel. Just a little bit right here. And right here. And we're good to go.
We'll do the crank pulley. So we'll just grease up
The outers of this right here, just a bit.
Alright, so you'll see that there's a notch right there, and on the crank there'll be, a dimple on it, so just do your best to follow that and then slide it right in by giving it a couple taps. And once you achieve that, you'll have a little bit of a small lip right here, which is fine. You want to have a little bit of space back here for the pulley not to come in contact with the timing cover. So once you do that, go ahead and tighten it up. Tight. Alright guys, so next we'll be installing the stud for dry belt tensioner. So there's going to be a stud for this guy right here, in which it goes through the timing cover, and it will be that guy right there. So that guy right there needs to come off for you to take off your timing cover when you're taking off your timing cover. So it'll come off when you take out the nut for it. If it doesn't, you will need to have a stud tool like this one right here. So you need something like this to extract it, and once you extract it, you could take off your timing cover. In this case, we're putting it back on, so you will need to put it back on. So if you don't have this tool right here, you're gonna need to invest around $20 on Amazon to get that, because you definitely need to put it back in to torque spec, and of course you don't want the tensioner to be flying all over the place, so you definitely need to do that and not strip the threads on the stud. So you're gonna need that. Alright, next we'll be putting in the dry belt tensioner. Now you're gonna have a very, very long bolt that's gonna feed through the timing cover, and of course you're gonna feed the shock or spring, whatever you want to call this, onto the stud. Now there's no way for you to feed that bolt while the tensioner is stationed on the cover. So what you need to do is actually feed the bolt first inside and actually not let it poke through yet. So just enough for you to feed it through. And once you do that, you could you start to station the tensioner, and once you station it, you feed the main bolt through the timing cover, and tighten that guy up with the stud with the nut, and you're ready to go. Otherwise, if you just station the tensioner first, there will be no way for you to get that bolt outside of there. Otherwise, we're just going to be hitting against the car frame. And at the same time, you need to jack up the motor underneath just a bit for you to get through and start doing some work. Once you have it fed through, this will be a 12 mil on top, 12 millimeter, and a 17 mil bolt for the main one. So I decided to grab a new dry belt. That's the part number right there. Deco, a local automotive parts store. Mine was cracked, and this one obviously is brand new, so it's not cracked. So put a brand new dry belt to that, and about to route it up. Alright, so as you can see in the diagram, I routed the dry belt properly, and my endpoint was on this pulley right here for the alternator. Now it's going to be a little bit more difficult. You got to have extremely long ratchet, or a socket with the ratchet on there. I have a ratcheting wrench that has a pretty long handle on it. It's a 19 mil. The trick to it is actually, once you start pulling on it, you basically yank on it little by little until you start to see that compress up. Because if you just do it, just by freehand and try to yank on it, it takes a little bit of a while for it to start compressing and give you leverage to actually do the final loop right here on the alternator pulley. So just wait a few seconds for you to do that, and then you'll get that situated. Go ahead and put back your motor mount. Drop it in. So you're going to put 2 bolts here, 3 bolts along the body of the frame, and then 2 nuts that go underneath right here. Valve cover removal will be on a different video, but it's pretty straightforward. before you take off the timing cover, you need to take off the valve cover. So that'll be on a separate video for me to introduce to you guys. But it's pretty straightforward. You just want to dive into it. But other than that, just hold off. Give me a little bit of time to upload the video for you guys, and I'll definitely show you guys how to do that. But it's pretty straightforward. Just take off your coil plugs, your spark plugs, your bolts all around, all the way around, and of course your connectors for your coils. So lastly, we're going to do as far as the timing process is engage that timing tensioner that we put on there, that spring loaded thing that we installed in the back of the head of the car. Well, we need to engage that for the chain to actually have some tension on it. If you don't do this, then you might see some failure in your car. So you definitely want to follow this process. So go ahead and do that. Grab your 19mm socket until you hear a click. That's basically when the tensioner releases and engages. Sorry for the long video, but it's just what it is. It's quite a long process. It's a little bit tedious, I would say, but it's worth it because it's a pet peeve of mine knowing that my cars leak oil. So had to get that situated, and hopefully I did a good job and it does work. So thanks for sticking in, and the next video we'll be putting back the valve cover. Of course, working on the process of finishing relocating my battery, and I also saw that my tranny mount is out, so that's an easy fix. I just need to buy that, and that'll be it. Hopefully, I'll delete the cat as soon as I get it running, get a tune, and hit the racetrack again and see what kind of numbers we're getting. So I'll catch you guys on the next time, and thank you very much for tuning in. Like, comment for any questions, and of course always subscribe to the channel for more content that's coming up, because I definitely have plans for the vehicle and the car, and I might have a surprise for you. Might have something coming on the way as far as another project, so don't want to spoil that news, but stay tuned. I'll see you guys. Thanks.